This is a little integrated amplifier, and at $69 it's so affordable that even a kid who's working a summertime job could easily afford to buy one. In fact, interestingly enough, this company doesn't market this product as being some lifestyle solution, and instead they're gearing it towards the audiophile, particularly towards audiophiles that are going to be using something like this for their desktop system. And the big question is it any good? Well, let's talk about that. Alright guys, so here it is, the Loxjie A10 integrated amplifier. As usual, before I talk about how it sounds, I first want to show you all what it is that you get with this piece, starting with the most obvious thing, which is going to be its unique triangular aesthetic. Now clearly, this isn't going to be for everybody, but I like it just because it's so different. I also like the build quality of this unit. This entire piece right here is made out of aluminum, as is the front plate, and even the volume control, which feels nice by the way, is made out of metal. We have our on and off switch. It illuminates as blue when it's on, and red when it's off. On the back here, things get pretty crowded. We have a set of RCA inputs. We have our plug for the power supply, which is going to be a switching power supply. And then we have, of course, some small speaker terminals. Now, when connecting your speakers to this amplifier, I would recommend using cables that use banana plugs just because it's a simple plug-and-play situation. If you use bare wire or spades, just be real careful because this is all very close together and it'd be very easy for the cables to touch, which would result in a short, which is going to result in problems. Now, when it comes to the power output rating, this is where things get a little bit fuzzy because if you go to Loxjie's Amazon page, they have it rated as 60 watts into 4 ohms. But if you go to their main webpage, they have it rated as 40 watts into an unknown impedance load. So what I did is I went to Texas Instruments and I looked at the TPA3116DP, I believe that's the name, D2. Anyways, they basically have that chip rated as being 50 watts into 4 ohms and 30 watts into 8 ohms. So that's what we're going to go with. I'm too lazy to measure it, especially since I don't really have a dummy load on hand. So yeah, that's what we're going to go with. And that leads me, of course, to how this unit sounds. So yeah, let's get right to it. Alright, so the big questions are, is this amplifier any good, and what does it sound like, and what can you expect if you were to bring it home and to try it for yourself? So to answer the first question, I will say this. Yeah, this is a pretty good amplifier. I mean, is it a giant killer? Is it going to dethrone $1,000 integrated amplifiers? No, not really. But is it going to sound as cheap as this price tag would suggest? Well, also, no, not really. So I think the best way to unpack this is to first go over the product's general character, go over its strengths, highlight some of the other attributes about the performance, talk about its weaknesses, and then, as always, to wrap all of this up. So, starting with the character. This amplifier is going to take on a presentation that's on the forward and cool side of neutral. The treble and the upper mid-range are going to be tilted up. The rest of the mid-range is going to be fairly neutral, if not cool sounding. And then the bass is going to be strong. It's going to be pretty articulate, especially for something at this price point. But it still has this slightly warm character, which I'll attribute to the power supply. And I actually welcome that because I think that's what gives the presentation this rounded musicality to it. So, this is basically what I would say is going to be the strengths of this amplifier. Things that are going to pop out to people regardless of if you're new or experienced. And the first thing is going to be clarity. The clarity of this amplifier is exceptional for the money. It doesn't sound veiled or muddy like a lot of affordable pieces do. In fact, if you're new to this and this is one of your first audiophile pieces, you're probably going to experience that cliched, oh my God, I've never heard information sound like this before, or my music sound like this before. It's pretty good. I would say it's right up there with $400 to $500 integrated amps in that regard. In fact, that's probably its most salient attribute is effortless clarity across the entire frequency range. Next, you have exceptional power delivery for something of this size. If you're running efficient loudspeakers, especially in a desktop environment, this thing is going to have more power than you'll probably ever use. In fact, I kind of wonder how they have this configured because it seems like the gain of this piece is real high because you don't have to turn the volume knob up too much in order to get a lot of sound out of this thing. Now, if you're running inefficient speakers, like say the Buchardt S400s or a Harbeth P3ESRs, then it's going to be best in the desktop application, but it still has no problems driving those loads, and it stays cool, or I should say the power supply stays real cool throughout the entire listening sessions, or at least that's been my experience. Next, you're going to have the bass. Of course, people who haven't experienced Class D, especially in something like this, are going to be in for a surprise. You're going to look at it and think, this probably is going to have weak bass. Wrong. It's going to be very, very strong. And then lastly, low noise. And this really surprised me because I thought, okay, it seems like this is a high gain design. A lot of Class D amplifiers don't really respond too well to that, but the noise floor is exceptionally low. Even mechanically, the power supply makes no noise, and that's always good news. Now, let's go into the specifics. So, as I mentioned before, with the treble, it is going to be tilted up. Now, I wouldn't call it aggressive or bright sounding, or at least not on most speakers, but it is going to be tilted up. But here's the thing, it's airy, it's spacious sounding, and it's, dare I say it for the money, refined sounding. For something under $100, you're getting treble performance it's just really good. Again, on the forward side of neutral, but really good. Where things get polarizing is going to be the upper mid-range, and this is where a lot of distortion occurs with most Class D designs. And in this case, it is going to be forward, and it's something you have to experience for yourself in order to determine whether or not it's for you. The rest of the mid-range is going to be pretty articulate and clear. Good depth to it, good layering. On the cool side of neutral, so it's not going to be the warmest sounding amplifier on planet Earth, but still, there's going to be some depth that you'll hear within the music because of that voicing. And then we have the bass, as mentioned before. It's strong, it's articulate. There's a little bit of warmth there, which, again, I attribute to the power supply. And again, I actually like that coloration because for something at this price point, it's good to have just a little bit of color there, just a little bit of musicality. Dynamics is going to be good for something like this. When it comes to the ability to play loud and to sound uncluttered with complex music, it depends on the kind of speakers you're running. If you're running something inefficient like the Harbeth P3ESR, it's going to start to sound confused when the music gets really complex and you're really digging into the power output. But on efficient speakers like Klipsch, it's fine. I mean, you have to really be jamming out in order to run into a problem there. And lastly, let's talk about imaging. Imaging is going to be very good. I've come to find that a lot of affordable pieces kind of put a box around the presentation, but this amplifier lets the speaker do its thing. So if the speaker has great imaging characteristics, that's what you're going to hear. If the speaker's not so great at it, that's what you're going to hear, which is actually pretty impressive for something at this price. Still, it's not perfect, so let's go over those imperfections right now. So as you can imagine, it's pretty difficult to criticize a $69 amplifier, let alone one that's well built and sounds as good as it does. Still, there's at least two things that I need to mention here, and the first thing is I am a little bit frustrated by the inconsistency in the power output rating just because that's 101 stuff. It's something that you would think this company would have an agreement on when it comes to their own product pages. And then number two, this has a very distinct character. Again, it's on the forward side of neutral, both in the upper mid-range and treble. It's going to be something some people like and some people not so much. Otherwise, though, I think it's a well-rounded piece, especially for the money, and that leads me to my final thoughts. Alright, so I'm going to wrap up this entire review by being incredibly blunt, and I want to start off by highlighting the fact that affordable Class D amplifiers are nothing new. In fact, let me show you something. This is the TEC AL700P. This is a 3-channel amplifier that used tri-path modules. I believe they outputted roughly 30 watts into 8 ohms, and I picked it up for $99 new over 10 years ago. And while it retailed for a little bit more than that, the point is, affordable Class D amplifiers have been around for a very long time. But what I've also noticed is that they're getting more compact, better built, they're getting more powerful, and honestly the performance seems to be more well-rounded than their predecessors from many years ago, which of course is always a good thing. Now the second thing I want to mention is that if you were to do a quick Google search or to search for similar products on Amazon, you're going to notice that there are a number of compact Class D amps out there, to include amps that use the same exact modules as this one. And the big question is there going to be any major differences between them? Well, I don't have those answers because I'd need to hear all of them here in order to be able to tell you. Now, I will note that just because something uses the same transistors or chipsets doesn't mean you're going to get the same performance. There's a lot that goes into amplifier, let alone integrated amplifier design, that influences the performance of the piece. But I will say this, the Loxjie A10 for $69 is an exceptional amplifier. It's well built. The noise floor seems very low, and it does a lot of things that are actually legitimately good, even by audiophile standards. I think it's an easy piece to recommend to a lot of people because there's just so much functionality behind it. Whether you're going to use it in a desktop setup, whether you're an experienced audiophile and you want something for a different system outside of your main rig, or maybe you're new to this game and you want this to serve as your centerpiece for your affordable setup. I mean, there's just a lot that you can do with it. Clearly, it has a unique signature. It's not going to be for everybody, but I think it is a very good piece for the money. And honestly, given how easy it is to buy and to try out, I feel like it's something that's easy to recommend to just about anybody who's curious to experience something like this. Anyways, guys, that's just my take on this amplifier. As always, thanks for watching, and until next time, peace. Oh yeah, one more thing. It's not going to be easy to predict whether or not this amplifier is going to make for a good match with your loudspeakers. And I say that because normally when you come across something that has a distinct performance envelope, in this case, something that's on the forward side of neutral, it's easy to go, oh, well, it'll probably make for a good match with something that's smooth and or warm sounding. But that's not the case with this integrated amp. In fact, let me give you some examples. I first paired it up to the Pioneer BS21s, a set of speakers that are warm, rolled off, and you'd think, wow, this would make for a great match. And instead, it was just so-so. The same thing with the Harbeth P3ESRs. It was so-so. Now, it did form a good match with the Buchardt S300s as predicted, but the other two should have been fine, and instead it was just kind of lackluster. Now, on the flip side, you would think that this amp would form a horrible match with the Klipsch RP600Ms, but actually, that was maybe the best synergy that I've come across short of the Polk Audio T50s, which also make for a damn good match with this amplifier. So this is going to be one of those situations to where you have to try it and see if it works for you. The good news is it's an easy to buy piece. I mean, it's available on most major online platforms and most of them offer trial periods. So unfortunately, I can't help you out in determining whether or not this is going to match your Infinities or your Kefs or whatever it is that you own. You're going to have to try it for yourself. Anyways, guys, for real this time, peace.